Listen closely. There is a reason you were guided here at this exact moment. This is not random. This is alignment. Right now, someone connected to your life is shaken in a way they never expected. Not because you spoke louder. Not because you chased. But because you became still. They discovered something about you that shattered the version of you they thought they controlled. They realized you are no longer operating from fear. And that realization broke their balance. God says, they thought your silence meant weakness. But silence was where your strength was being rebuilt. You may have felt misunderstood. You may have felt watched, judged, or quietly opposed. You sensed something was off, but you couldn't explain it. You felt resistance without confrontation, distance without reason, tension without words. That was not confusion. That was discernment awakening. God says, I allowed you to see without showing you everything. Because if you had known earlier, it would have distracted you from your growth. The person who is shaking now once felt secure in their position over you. They believed you would always explain yourself, always seek approval, always shrink to keep peace. But something changed. You stopped reacting. You stopped defending. You stopped bending your spirit to be understood. And the moment you did that, control slipped from their hands. God says, they saw your light increase while their influence faded. That is what shocked them. They are not disturbed by your success. They are disturbed by your clarity. You began to see patterns instead of excuses, energy instead of words, intent instead of appearances. And when that happened, you quietly stepped out of reach. This is why their emotions are unsettled. This is why their behavior shifted. This is why they are thinking about you more now than ever before. Because they know something they cannot undo has already happened. God says, you outgrew the version of yourself they depended on. You didn't announce it. You didn't explain it. You simply evolved. And evolution is unsettling to those who benefit from your old limits. If you've been feeling a strange mix of peace and pressure, this is why. Peace from alignment. Pressure from opposition that no longer has access. God sees the silent battles you never spoke about. The restraint you practiced. The prayers you whispered when no one was listening. And God says, I was building you in private so you could stand unshaken in public. That person now realizes you cannot be manipulated the same way. Your reactions changed. Your energy shifted. Your presence carries authority instead of apology. This is not arrogance. This is restoration. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming clearer. God says, what they lost was not you. What they lost was control. And that loss exposed their fear. Stay still. Stay grounded. Do not explain what God is revealing through your life. Because this is only the beginning. Stay with this moment. Do not rush past what is being revealed now. God says, the shock they are experiencing is not emotional. It is spiritual. Because they finally understood something they tried to ignore for a long time. They realized you are protected in ways they cannot reach. They noticed that every attempt to confuse you failed. Every silent plan backfired. Every hidden intention lost its power. And this realization unsettled them deeply. You were never meant to fight this battle openly. You were meant to outgrow it quietly. God says, they expected resistance. They expected reaction. They did not expect elevation. When you stopped feeding the situation with attention, it began to starve. When you stopped explaining yourself, truth began to speak on its own. When you chose peace over proving, authority surrounded you. This is why their thoughts are restless now. This is why they replay old conversations. This is why they suddenly remember things they dismissed before. Because now they see clearly. They see that you were never confused. You were discerning. You were watching. You were learning. God says, I allowed them to underestimate you so they would expose themselves. What they thought was patience was preparation. What they thought was delay was alignment. What they thought was weakness was wisdom in disguise. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need confrontation. Time and truth handled what words never could. And now they are facing the weight of their own awareness. They know they cannot return to the old dynamic. They know you see through the patterns now. They know you no longer absorb what isn't meant for you. That realization is powerful. God says, you became untouchable the moment you chose clarity over chaos. If you've noticed people behaving differently around you, this is why. If you've felt a shift in how others respond to your presence, this is why. If silence speaks louder now than conversation ever did, your spirit matured, your energy refined, your alignment strengthened. And when alignment happens, exposure follows naturally. They are not shocked by what you said. They are shocked by who you became. God says, they felt safe when you were predictable. They became uneasy when you became intentional. This message is not here to inflate pride. It is here to confirm truth. You are not imagining the shift. You are not misreading the energy. You are not overthinking the distance. This is separation by design. God says, I am removing you from spaces that no longer honor your growth. Stay calm. Stay grounded. Do not look back for validation from places you already outgrew. Because what is unfolding now is preparation for something greater. Pause here. What is unfolding now goes deeper than you realize. God says, the moment they discovered who you truly are, their confidence collapsed. Because the truth about you did not match the story they told themselves. They thought they understood you. They believed they had you figured out. They assumed your kindness meant compliance. But they were wrong. You were never small. You were reserved. You were never lost. You were learning. God says, I kept your true strength hidden until the right time. Not to protect them, but to prepare you. Something shifted when you stopped questioning your worth. When you stopped chasing clarity from people who thrived on confusion. When you stopped waiting for permission to be yourself. That shift was noticed. They felt it before they could explain it. They sensed it before they could name it. They realized the version of you they depended on no longer existed. This is where the shock began. God says, they recognize that you now move with purpose instead of reaction. Your presence carries certainty. Your words carry weight. Your silence carries truth. You are no longer easily influenced. No longer emotionally accessible to manipulation. No longer drawn into cycles that drain your spirit. And this unsettled them. Because control requires access. And access has been removed. God says, you did not shut doors in anger. You closed them in wisdom. The distance you feel is not abandonment. It is protection. It is alignment correcting itself. You may have wondered why certain people faded without explanation. Why conversations lost depth. Why familiar energy no longer resonates. This is not loss. This is refinement. God says, I am filtering your environment to match your growth. What once felt heavy now feels irrelevant. What once demanded your attention now feels quiet. What once held power over your emotions now feels distant. That is healing. And healing changes how others relate to you. They sense they can no longer influence your decisions. They sense their opinions no longer shape your direction. They sense their presence is no longer required for your peace. This realization shakes them. Because you did not confront them. You did not announce your boundaries. You simply became unmovable. God says, stillness was your breakthrough. Remain steady. Remain aware. Do not rush to explain what God is doing within you. Because what you are stepping into next requires clarity, not noise. And this chapter is preparing you for it. Remain here. This part is not loud, but it is powerful. God says, what they felt was not jealousy alone. It was realization. They realized you are no longer reachable at the level they once accessed. Something inside them knew the truth before their mind accepted it. They sensed your alignment had crossed a point of no return. You are no longer reacting to energy that once pulled you in. You are no longer explaining truths that were never meant to be debated. You are no longer proving loyalty to those who questioned your value. And that realization shook them. God says, they lost control the moment you chose peace over permission. Your calm became unfamiliar to them. Your clarity became intimidating. Your distance became undeniable. You did not withdraw to punish anyone. You withdrew to protect what God was rebuilding in you. That is why this season feels different. Not dramatic, not chaotic, but clear. You may notice now that what once drained you no longer has the same effect. Old triggers feel weak. Old patterns feel obvious. Old attachments feel complete. God says, completion does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply stops asking questions. This is where maturity lives. This is where discernment becomes natural. This is where peace stops being temporary and becomes permanent. If this message is settling deeply in you, let it move beyond you. Truth multiplies when it is recognized. Light strengthens when it is acknowledged. God says, those who are meant to hear this will find it at the right moment. You are stepping into a phase where alignment attracts alignment, where clarity invites clarity, where peace protects peace. The person who once watched you from a place of control now watches from a place of uncertainty. They see you walking forward without their influence. They see you grounded without their approval. And that is something they never expected. God says, I am positioning you where explanation is no longer required. Stay steady. Stay aware. Stay connected to what is unfolding. Because what is coming next will require the version of you that no longer shakes. Stay present. What is being revealed now is subtle, but it is decisive. God says, they are not disturbed by what you gained. They are disturbed by what you no longer need. You no longer seek reassurance from places that once defined you. You no longer wait for messages that once controlled your mood. You no longer depend on recognition to confirm your value. And this shift changed everything. They expected you to circle back. They expected hesitation. They expected doubt. But instead, they saw certainty. God says, certainty is frightening to those who relied on your uncertainty. You did not announce your independence. You demonstrated it through consistency, through peace that did not fluctuate, through focus that did not break. This is why they are unsettled now. They can no longer predict your reactions. They can no longer influence your choices. They can no longer access your emotional space. Because you are no longer operating from survival. You are operating from truth. God says, truth does not argue. It simply stands. You may notice that some people suddenly speak differently to you. Some hesitate. Some observe more than they speak. Some fall silent altogether. This is not coincidence. This is recognition. They realize the dynamic has shifted permanently. They realize the door they once walked through freely is now closed without force. They realize your life is moving forward without their input. God says, forward movement always exposes who was comfortable with you staying still. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You are not required to shrink to ease their uncertainty. You are not obligated to explain your growth. Your assignment is alignment. And alignment demands integrity. If you have felt a quiet confidence growing within you, this is confirmation. If you have felt less reactive, this is confirmation. If you have felt detached from chaos without becoming cold, this is confirmation. God says, I am anchoring you so deeply that distraction cannot pull you away. Remain grounded. Remain intentional. Remain faithful to what you have learned, because the shock they are experiencing is temporary. but the transformation happening within you is permanent. And what you are becoming next will not require approval. Stay here. This is where understanding deepens. God says, what they are facing now is not regret. It is awareness. Awareness arrives quietly, but it changes everything. They are beginning to see the moments they overlooked, the loyalty they assumed, the patience they underestimated. And now, there is no way to return to what once was. God says, you crossed a line in growth that cannot be reversed. You did not harden your heart. You strengthened it. You did not close yourself off. You refined your access. This distinction matters, because what is happening now is not separation by conflict. It is separation by clarity. You may feel lighter even when circumstances remain the same. You may feel calmer even when uncertainty exists. You may feel steady even when answers are incomplete. That is alignment at work. God says, when alignment is real, peace becomes internal. They are realizing that your calm is not temporary. Your confidence is not borrowed. Your direction is not dependent on them. And this realization unsettles old dynamics. They expected explanation. They expected negotiation. They expected you to pause for them, but you did not. You continued forward without resistance or resentment, without announcement or justification. God says, quiet movement is the strongest form of growth. Your focus sharpened. Your reactions softened. Your spirit stabilized. That combination is powerful. It makes manipulation ineffective. It makes confusion irrelevant. It makes control impossible. This is why the shock still lingers. They cannot find an opening. They cannot locate the version of you they once understood. They cannot predict your next move, because your next move is not driven by emotion. It is guided by purpose. God says, purpose removes the need for approval. Remain attentive to what feels aligned. Remain cautious of what feels familiar but heavy. Remain faithful to the clarity you've been given. You are not drifting. You are directed. And the direction you are walking now is leading you away from what once held power over you. That power will not return. Stay with this final truth. This is the moment everything comes together. God says, they are no longer wondering if you changed. They know you did. And the reason this shook them so deeply is simple. Your change was internal before it was visible. By the time they noticed, it was already complete. You did not transform in chaos. You transformed in stillness. You did not rise through noise. You rose through clarity. God says, the strongest growth happens when no one is watching. They now see that you no longer seek their reactions. You no longer measure yourself by their responses. You no longer adjust your truth to keep peace. And that understanding ended the old chapter permanently. You are not waiting for closure. You are walking in it. This is why your presence feels different now. Why conversations feel shorter. Why energy exchanges feel selective. God says, you are no longer available to what once drained you. This does not make you distant. It makes you intentional. You have learned where your energy belongs. You have learned when silence is strength. You have learned that peace is not passive. And because of this, you are standing in a new position. The shock they felt was the moment they realized they could no longer influence your direction. They could no longer shape your narrative. They could no longer delay your movement. God says, what I have established in you cannot be undone by outside reactions. You are not meant to go back. You are not meant to explain. You are not meant to hesitate. What is ahead of you requires this level of clarity, this level of calm, this level of trust. And now, you are ready. Remain grounded in what you know. Remain confident in what you feel. Remain aligned with what is unfolding. Because the person who once held influence now watches from a distance. And you are walking forward without needing permission. Stay still for this moment. This is not an ending. This is confirmation. God says, what shocked them most was not your strength. It was your peace. They expected intensity. They expected reaction. They expected emotion. Instead, they saw calm. And calm revealed everything. Because calm only comes when fear is gone. Calm only appears when clarity is complete. Calm only remains when truth has settled. God says, you are no longer divided inside. There is no inner argument pulling you backward. No silent doubt questioning your direction. No need to revisit what already resolved itself. That inner unity is powerful. It changes how you speak. It changes how you move. It changes how others experience you. They noticed. They felt the difference without words. They sensed the shift without explanation. They realized the influence they once held had expired. God says, expiration does not announce itself. It simply stops working. You are not ignoring anyone. You are honoring what feels aligned. You are not avoiding the past. You are standing in the present. This is why life feels quieter now. Not empty. Not lonely. Just clear. The noise faded because it no longer matched who you became. God says, I did not remove people to isolate you. I removed noise so you could hear me clearly. And now you do. Your intuition is sharper. Your reactions are slower. Your decisions are steadier. This is maturity. This is discernment. This is strength without force. They may still think about you. They may still wonder what changed. They may still feel unsettled by your distance. But none of that belongs to you anymore. God says, your responsibility now is not to explain. It is to continue. Continue choosing peace. Continue honoring clarity. Continue trusting the alignment that brought you here. Because this version of you was built intentionally. And what comes next will recognize you without you having to prove anything. Stay present. This message is settling something final within you. God says, the reason they are still shaken is because your peace did not fade. They waited for it to pass. They expected you to return to old patterns. But you didn't. Your calm remained consistent. Your direction stayed clear. Your focus did not drift. And that consistency confirmed everything. God says, consistency is proof of transformation. You are no longer adjusting yourself to fit expectations. You are no longer measuring progress by approval. You are no longer available for cycles that repeat without growth. This is why the connection changed. Not because of distance, but because of definition. You defined what you allow. You defined what matters. You defined where your energy goes. And definitions create boundaries without force. They see it now. They see that your life is no longer reactive. It is responsive. It moves with intention. God says, intention makes old strategies ineffective. You may notice now that even when challenges arise, they do not process you the same way. You pause before reacting. You trust what unfolds. That trust is not accidental. It was built through moments no one saw. Through decisions you made quietly. Through strength you practiced internally. God says, private obedience produces public stability. They are not confused by your silence anymore. They are confused by your certainty. Because certainty removes leverage. It removes influence. It removes control. And what remains is respect or distance. Either way, you are no longer affected. You are not detached from life. You are anchored in it. This is why your presence feels grounded. Why your words feel measured. Why your path feels defined. God says, I am not leading you back. I am leading you forward. Forward into spaces that recognize your growth. Forward into connections that match your clarity. Forward into peace that does not require explanation. Remain attentive. Remain faithful. Remain aligned. Because the transformation that unsettled them is the same transformation that is securing your future. Stay with this awareness. This part seals what you already feel. God says, they finally understood that you are not returning to the old version of yourself. And that realization changed how they see everything. They stopped waiting for you to explain. They stopped expecting you to reach out. They stopped assuming you would soften your boundaries. Because now they know. You did not walk away in anger. You walked forward in truth. God says, truth creates distance from what cannot follow you. Your growth did not require noise. It did not require validation. It did not require approval. It required courage to remain calm while everything shifted. And you did. This is why your energy feels settled now. Not excited. Not rushed. Just steady. Steadiness is rare. And rare things are noticed. They noticed. They noticed you are no longer pulled by opinions. No longer delayed by hesitation. No longer shaken by uncertainty. God says, you became grounded where others remain reactive. That contrast revealed everything. You are no longer waiting for clarity. You are living inside it. Your decisions are quieter now, but stronger. Your movement is slower, but deliberate. Your presence speaks without effort. This is alignment. And alignment cannot be copied, forced, or reversed. God says, what is aligned does not compete. It continues. You may not see every step ahead, but you trust where you are standing. You may not have every answer, but you recognize peace when it arrives. That recognition is wisdom, and wisdom changed the entire dynamic. They no longer wonder if you changed. They wonder how you became so certain. God says, certainty is born when fear leaves. Fear left because you stopped abandoning yourself. You stopped negotiating your values. You stopped waiting for permission to be whole. Now, you move differently. And the path ahead is opening not because you pushed, but because you aligned. Remain steady. Remain faithful to what you know. Remain present in this clarity. Because the shock they experienced was the moment they realized you are no longer reachable at the level they once knew. And that chapter has ended for good. Stay centered. This part confirms what has already begun to settle inside you. God says, what separated you was not distance. It was direction. The moment your direction changed, alignment followed. And alignment naturally removes what cannot move with you. You did not force separation. You did not demand understanding. You simply chose honesty with yourself. That choice shifted everything. God says, when you stopped questioning your worth, the atmosphere around you changed. You no longer tolerate subtle imbalance. You no longer excuse energy that drains you. You no longer stay where your spirit feels restricted. And this is why the space around you feels different now. It feels quieter, not empty, but intentional. They noticed the quiet first. Then they noticed the distance. Then they noticed the certainty. Because certainty does not chase. It does not convince. It does not wait. God says, certainty walks forward even when no one follows. You became comfortable standing alone in truth. And that comfort made you unmovable. You are not hardened. You are anchored. You are not disconnected. You are discerning. This is why confusion no longer pulls you in. This is why chaos no longer excites you. This is why peace now feels familiar. God says, familiar peace is a sign of spiritual maturity. They feel it when they think of you. The calm they cannot access. The clarity they cannot disturb. And that awareness stays with them. You do not need to carry it. Your responsibility now is simple. Protect what has been built. Honor what feels aligned. Continue without looking back. God says, what is ahead of you requires this steadiness. Not force. Not urgency. But quiet confidence. You are no longer becoming. You are being. and this state cannot be undone. Remain here. This part brings quiet closure. God says, what you are feeling now is stability, not stagnation. It may feel unfamiliar because chaos once felt normal, but this calm is earned. You did not arrive here by chance. You arrived through restraint, through awareness, through choosing peace when reaction felt easier, and that choice reshaped your life. God says, stability is what remains when fear no longer leads. You are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are no longer bracing for disruption. You are no longer scanning for signals from others. You are present. Presence changes how everything responds to you. They notice that you stopped checking for reactions, that you stopped adjusting your energy, that you stopped explaining your silence. And in that moment, they understood. God says, you are no longer available for misalignment. This does not make you distant. It makes you accurate. You know what fits. You know what does not. And you no longer negotiate with that knowledge. That clarity feels like confidence. That confidence feels like peace. That peace feels permanent. God says, peace becomes permanent when you stop abandoning yourself. You are not rushing forward. You are not looking backward. You are simply moving in rhythm with truth. This is why things feel resolved without conversation. This is why endings feel clean. This is why beginnings feel natural. Your life is no longer pulled in opposite directions. God says, unity within creates order around you. The shock they felt has settled into understanding. Understanding has turned into distance. And distance has turned into acceptance. You do not need to witness this. You do not need confirmation. Your clarity is enough. Remain faithful to this steadiness. Remain grounded in what feels aligned. Remain open to what unfolds next, because what follows stability is expansion, and you are ready for it. Part 13. Stay steady. This is where confidence becomes natural. God says, you are no longer proving who you are. You are living it. The difference is powerful. Before, you questioned timing. You questioned people. You questioned yourself. Now, you listen. You feel when something aligns. You sense when something does not. And you act without hesitation. God says, discernment has replaced doubt. This is why your life feels simpler, even when responsibilities increase. You are no longer divided inside. Your yes is clear. Your no is calm. That inner agreement changes everything. They notice that you stopped seeking reassurance, that you stopped repeating yourself, that you stopped explaining your choices, and they understood something important. God says, you found certainty within, not around you. That kind of certainty cannot be shaken by opinion. It cannot be delayed by confusion. It cannot be pulled back by the past. You move forward with quiet assurance, not rushed. Not pressured, just intentional. This intention reshaped your path. You no longer chase momentum. You allow momentum to meet you. You no longer force connections. You allow alignment to reveal itself. God says, what is meant for you recognizes you. This is why resistance feels weaker now. Why obstacles feel temporary. Why challenges no longer feel personal. You are anchored. Anchored people are not easily disturbed. They observe. They choose. They continue. God says, continuity is strength. You are not waiting for approval. You are not preparing an explanation. You are simply walking forward with trust. And that trust is visible. It shows in your calm. It shows in your focus. It shows in your presence. This is not a phase. This is a foundation. Remain here. Remain aware. Remain aligned. Because what you are building now will support everything that comes next. Stay with this awareness. This part brings a deeper realization. God says, you are no longer responding to life. You are leading yourself through it. That change is subtle, but it is powerful. Before, you waited for signals. You waited for confirmation. You waited for others to move first. Now, you move with inner agreement. God says, inner agreement creates momentum without force. You trust your timing. You trust your instincts. You trust the calm that guides your decisions. This is why hesitation no longer holds you. This is why doubt no longer circles your thoughts. This is why peace feels steady, not fragile. They noticed that you stopped seeking permission. They noticed that you stopped checking reactions. They noticed that you became comfortable with your own direction. And that realization shifted the balance. God says, self-leadership changes every dynamic. You no longer explain pauses. You no longer justify silence. You no longer overextend to be understood. Clarity removes confusion. Clarity removes tension. Clarity removes the need to convince. This is why your presence feels firm now. Not rigid. Not distant. Just grounded. God says, grounded people are not easily moved. You recognize when something aligns immediately. You recognize when something drains you quietly. And you choose accordingly. There is no drama in this. There is no conflict in this. There is only truth. Truth simplified your life. What once felt complicated now feels obvious. What once felt urgent now feels unnecessary. What once felt heavy now feels complete. God says, completion does not shout. It settles. You are not closing chapters with emotion. You are closing them with understanding. And understanding brings peace that stays. Remain in this clarity. Remain faithful to what feels right. Remain present in this steadiness. Because the strength you carry now is not temporary. It is who you have become. Stay focused. This part brings recognition. God says, you are no longer asking life to make sense. It already does. What once felt confusing now feels aligned. What once felt delayed now feels timed. What once felt heavy now feels resolved. This did not happen overnight. It happened through consistency, through patience, through choosing truth even when it was quiet. God says, consistency turned clarity into confidence. You no longer interpret everything as a test. You no longer brace for disruption. You no longer expect peace to disappear. You trust it. That trust is visible. They notice that you stopped reacting to small things. That you stopped engaging in unnecessary tension. That you stopped carrying what was never yours. And that shift changed how they see you. God says, you became steady where others remain unsettled. Steadiness is powerful because it does not demand attention. It commands respect. You do not chase outcomes. You allow them to unfold. You do not force direction. You follow alignment. This is why your movement feels natural now. There is no rush. There is no hesitation. There is only forward motion. God says, forward motion does not require noise. You are no longer defining yourself by reaction. You are defining yourself by intention. And intention simplifies everything. You know when to speak. You know when to pause. You know when to move. This knowledge is calm. It does not rush. It does not doubt. God says, calm decision making is a sign of maturity. You are not searching for confirmation outside yourself. You are grounded in what you already know. That grounding changed your path. Remain steady in this recognition. Remain present in this understanding. Remain aligned with what feels right. Because the clarity you hold now is preparing you for what opens next. Remain attentive. This part reveals the final shift you may not have named yet. God says, you are no longer reacting to life from memory. You are responding from awareness. That difference changed everything. Before, old experiences shaped your reactions. Old disappointments influenced your expectations. Old patterns quietly guided your choices. Now, they don't. God says, awareness released you from repeating what you already learned. You pause before responding. You feel before deciding. You choose before committing. This is not hesitation. This is mastery. They notice that nothing easily pulls you anymore. No sudden words. No emotional pressure. No familiar tactics. Because you are no longer operating on instinct alone. You are operating on understanding. God says, understanding dissolves emotional hooks. You no longer need to be right. You no longer need to be seen. You no longer need to be acknowledged to feel secure. Security became internal. That internal security is what unsettled them most. They realized that even if they spoke, even if they reached out, even if they tried to reconnect, you would not be moved. Not because you are closed, but because you are complete. God says, completion is quiet, but undeniable. You have stopped reopening chapters that taught you what you needed to know. You have stopped revisiting situations that already revealed their truth. You have stopped negotiating with what feels misaligned. This is why your energy feels clean now. Why your decisions feel firm. Why your direction feels settled. You are not resisting life. You are flowing with it. God says, flow is strength without strain. Remain here. Remain grounded in this awareness. Remain faithful to what you have learned. Because the person you are now cannot be pulled back by what once confused you. That season has ended. And this clarity is permanent. Stay with this truth. This is where authority becomes natural. God says, you are no longer shaped by what happens around you. You are shaped by what you choose within. That power is real that does not argue. Power that does not rush. Power that does not react. You reached a place where emotions no longer lead your decisions. They inform you, but they do not drive you. God says, emotional maturity is the moment feeling stops controlling direction. You still care. You still feel. But you are no longer pulled off center by every shift. This is why your presence feels settled. This is why your voice feels measured. This is why your silence feels intentional. They notice the difference. They notice that you no longer respond immediately. That you no longer explain yourself repeatedly. That you no longer overextend to be understood. And that realization changed how they approach you. God says, people adjust when access changes. Your access is now selective. Not closed, but protected. You give energy where it grows. You step back where it drains. You move forward where it aligns. There is no confusion in this. There is no guilt in this. This is discernment. God says, discernment brings peace without apology. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You are no longer afraid of being different. You are no longer afraid of standing alone in truth. That fear left quietly. And when fear leaves, clarity stays. This is why the past no longer calls you back. This is why old triggers feel weak. This is why distractions lose their pull. You are present. Presence gives you authority over your time, your energy, your direction. God says, authority begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself. You are not waiting for life to change. You are living from the change that already happened. And this way of being cannot be undone. Remain here. Remain steady. Remain aligned. Because what you carry now is not something you found. It is something you became. Stay grounded in this moment. This part reveals why everything now feels irreversible. God says, you have crossed from learning into embodiment. What you once practiced, you now live naturally. There is no effort in your calm anymore. No forcing of patience. No reminding yourself to stay centered. It happens on its own. God says, what becomes natural cannot be taken away. You no longer scan rooms for approval. You no longer measure words before speaking truth. You no longer adjust your tone to be accepted. Acceptance is no longer external. This is why interactions feel different now. Why some people hesitate around you. Why others feel inspired without knowing why. They sense something settled in you. God says, stability changes how others approach you. You are not intimidating. You are anchored. Anchored people do not chase energy. They attract alignment. You notice now that distractions lose interest in you. That confusion does not linger. That unnecessary drama fades quickly. This is not luck. This is clarity enforcing itself. God says, when clarity is present, misalignment removes itself. You are no longer explaining boundaries. Your life reflects them. You are no longer defending choices. Your peace confirms them. This is quiet authority. Authority that does not announce itself. Authority that does not compete. Authority that does not rush. They see it. They understand now that access to you requires alignment. Not history. Not familiarity. Not expectation. Alignment. God says, alignment is the new requirement. You are not closing yourself to life. You are opening yourself to what fits. This is why opportunities feel cleaner. Why connections feel intentional. Why your days feel grounded. You are not waiting for a breakthrough. You are living inside one. Remain steady in this embodiment. Remain present in this awareness. Remain faithful to what you have become. Because the version of you that exists now is not temporary. It is established.